This is Russia, the largest country on Earth by land area, a nuclear superpower, and one of the most influential and controversial nations in modern geopolitics. Before anything else, one thing needs to be said. I'm not a military analyst. I'm not qualified to break down troop movements or battlefield strategy. But modern wars are no longer decided by weapons alone. They are decided by economies, by who can finance conflict longer, by who can absorb sanctions, by who can survive isolation. And when you study Russia from that angle, you begin to see a country that is far more fragile than its image suggests. The illusion of economic weakness. You've likely heard the comparison. Russia's economy is about the size of Texas. It's a clever line, but it misses the point. Texas is one of the most productive regions on the planet. Comparing it to an entire country already tells you something important. Russia is still the 11th largest economy in the world. The real question isn't whether Russia is small. The question is why a country with the world's largest landmass, immense natural resources, a highly educated population, and decades of global integration isn't much richer. 1991, a collapse without a plan. Modern Russia begins with the sudden collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. One day, the world's second superpower simply ceased to exist. Central planning vanished overnight. Supply chains broke apart. State ownership dissolved without replacement. Millions of people woke up inside a country that technically existed, but practically didn't function. Factories had workers, but no buyers. Workers had jobs, but no wages. Money existed, but nobody trusted it. And looming over all of this chaos was a terrifying reality. This broken state still controlled thousands of nuclear weapons. The rest of the world didn't just hope Russia would stabilize. It needed it to. Shock therapy and the free market leap. To prevent collapse or regression into Soviet-style authoritarianism, Russia adopted a radical approach. It embraced shock therapy, rapid liberalization based on Western economic doctrine, privatized state assets, open borders to trade, remove price controls, shrink government involvement. In theory, this would create a functioning market economy quickly. In reality, markets require institutions, and Russia didn't have them. Privatization without institutions. In functioning economies, privatization works because courts enforce contracts, regulators ensure competition, banks allocate capital responsibly. Russia had none of this. State assets weren't sold, they were distributed. Oil fields, mines, factories, and utilities ended up in the hands of a small group of insiders. These people didn't become rich because they were efficient. They became rich because they were connected. Thus, the oligarch system was born. Capital flight and a hollow economy. The tragedy wasn't just inequality. It was what the new elites did with their wealth. They didn't reinvest. They moved capital abroad. London property, Swiss banks, offshore structures. Money that could have built industries instead built safety nets for individuals. This starved Russia of long-term investment and locked the economy into raw materials. The lost 1990s. By the end of the decade, Russia was exhausted. GDP had collapsed. Life expectancy fell. Savings were wiped out. In 1998, the inevitable happened. Russia defaulted on its debt. The ruble collapsed. Banks froze. Wages went unpaid. Ironically, this collapse reset the system. Recovery built on oil. After 1998, three things changed. The ruble was weak. Debts were manageable. And global oil prices began to rise. Russia benefited massively. Energy exports flooded the economy with dollars. Just as stability returned, Vladimir Putin came to power. Order replaces chaos. Under Putin, the anarchy of the 1990s ended. Inflation was controlled. Wages were paid. Tax collection improved. The state reasserted control over strategic sectors, especially energy. Some oligarchs were crushed. Others were absorbed. Economic success became inseparable from political loyalty. This produced stability, but at a price. Growth without transformation. Between 2000 and 2013, Russia grew rapidly. GDP expanded nearly tenfold from crisis lows. Living standards improved. Consumption rose. Poverty fell, but the economy didn't transform. Manufacturing remained weak. Innovation lagged. Small businesses struggled. Russia grew richer, but not more productive. The two Russias. By the 2010s, Russia effectively had two economies. One exported oil, gas, and raw materials to the world. The other served domestic consumers with low productivity and low wages. Political power came from the first. Economic pain was absorbed by the second. This imbalance explains why sanctions hurt ordinary Russians far more than elites. Sanctions and strategic miscalculation. After Crimea in 2014, the West imposed sanctions. They weren't designed to collapse Russia overnight. They were designed to slow it down. And they worked gradually. Investment fell. Technology access declined. Growth stagnated. But high reserves and centralized power insulated the regime. Reserves are not immunity. Foreign currency reserves can absorb shocks. They cannot replace technology, skilled labor, foreign markets, trust. As sanctions deepened, Russia became more dependent on fewer partners and fewer exports. This made the economy manageable, but brittle. War changes the equation. War accelerates everything. Capital leaves faster. Talent emigrates. Technology access shrinks. Conflict doesn't just cost money. It costs the future. And economies that rely on raw materials struggle to adapt when cut off from the world. The long-term problem. Russia's greatest weakness isn't sanctions. It's path dependence. An economy built around extraction, centralized control, and elite protection does not pivot easily. Over time, growth slows, innovation falls, and power becomes increasingly expensive to maintain. Final verdict. Russia is not poor. It is structurally constrained. It had the resources, the population, and the moment in history to become one of the world's great economic powers. What it lacked was the willingness to build institutions that distributed opportunity rather than control. Because in the modern world, power doesn't come from territory. It comes from productive, trusted, adaptable economies. And that is the opportunity Russia missed.